Apologize for the delay. As you can see, we do not have a quorum present. That's why we have not started. We do have two folks out. One's working, one is ill, and two who are running extremely late from work, obviously. With that said, I am going to turn over what is not a meeting to our superintendent. We will proceed with student recognitions and anything that is of a presentation matter so we can get our students up, recognized, and on their way. And it will not be led by the board. This is not a called meeting until we do have a quorum. So I will turn this over to Superintendent Miles.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start just so we can go with what we're used to doing in class all the time anyway. And I'd like to invite some of our amazing elementary students, along with Ms. Harding, to come up and lead us in the pledges.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, let's just go ahead and introduce. All right, let us know who you guys are. Who wants to go first? Who are you? All right.
Arian Castro.
And then who's here with you?
My mom.
Where's Mom?
She's in the back.
There's Mom. All right, there's Mom. All right, next up.
I'm Haley Scott.
And who's here for you?
My mom.
Where's she at? Right there she is. We should make the moms come up. What do you guys think?
Yes.
Okay, we'll leave them up for now. They're looking at me like, no. All right, next up.
My name is Kinsley Lowe, and my mom is here with me today.
So I can definitely say moms are well represented in the room today. You guys did outstanding, awesome, and thank you very much. We appreciate you. Now, another group we want to recognize, and it's always a challenge. This is a once a month type thing. When we have those opportunities to recognize individuals, we want to recognize them. So, Mr. Mendez, if you could come up and bring it on to us. Let's give you the mic, sir.
Good evening. Y'all come up, please. They're not so brave when they're up here. Right here, right in front. Stand and be recognized. Okay, so this group of kids, they're our all-state musicians, and I will read off their. Well, first of all, we didn't recognize Tommy last school board, but we did have a send-off for you, for him, and he's a member of the ATSSB All-State Band. So congratulations to Tommy. They had a clinic about 2 weeks ago, and then they had a concert on that Saturday, and it was a very, very, it was an awesome performance. So, congratulations to Tommy. And so now I'll read off to you the solos and ensemble students who qualified for state. First of all, we had 16 entries. Out of the 16, 15 were first divisions. On bass clarinet solo, Kate Robinson, first division. And these are all, I'm not going to say state qualifier, they're all state qualifiers, so they'll be headed to state. On snare solo, Elijah Hernandez. A trumpet trio with Anthony Garza, Austin Rodriguez, and Rebecca Sanchez. Another trumpet trio with Sergio Mendez, Ricardo Olivares, and JJ Rodriguez. Brass quintet, Jocelyn Garcia, Anthony Garza, Skyland Kutzer, who is not here, Abraham Mendez, and Sergio Mendez. And percussion ensemble, Elijah Hernandez, Ricardo Olivares, and Blake Owens. So they qualified for state, and the state is going to be, I believe it is on the same day as graduation, so the next option is going to be on the Monday after graduation. So that is the one we're going to register to attend. It will be in Pflugerville, up in Austin, and each one of them will have a certain time and to perform their music and their ensembles. And we are expecting some really awesome results. This is a very strong group, and again, one more time, just wanted to recognize this year's All-State musicians. I think we're good.
All right, thanks you guys. Anything else you'd like to say? Oh, we're gonna take pictures. And of course, band directors as well. Band directors, Vanessa, nice try, I see you right.
For the paper, smile nice.
Can I
Hang on,
get
don't
their
go
names
over.
and everything? Did you
Get in a little bit tighter. And then don't forget you want a picture with your band directors. Parents love those. Kids is awkward for you guys. Just bear with them.
Just do it. God bless you. Thank you. And over here one time. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Again, congratulations. Okay, moving on from there, Mr. Roberts, if you can bring up the accountability report for me, please. I give everybody a chance to transition, and then we're going to move into the annual accountability report. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the accountability report. So, those of you curious, we don't need a quorum at this time because this is just information out to the public. So the first thing you have in there, of course, is the 2021-2022 table report. Remember, a lot of this information, those of you still here with me, is lagging information from last year. So you're going to see this information covered with me. It's been out to the public for a while. And then we'll move into the LSG later on this evening, which will cover current year data. So the first thing you'll see on there, once again, is the district scored an overall B. In the area of student achievement was a B overall. Student progress was A. And closing the gap was a C overall for a B. You're on the next page, right there. And then and I apologize, Ms. Roberts, because I actually don't have page numbers on mine. Mine just jumps through. So if you would, the next area is the high school in itself. The high school scored a B overall. Student achievement was a B. Student progress was an A. And closing the gap was a C.
Here?
Yes. If you want to go ahead and jump to That's ISD, I just did high school. If you can slide down, you'll find junior high next. So, and junior high, for everyone still attending, for student achievement, it was not rated, which simply means we definitely have some work to do in that area. We're already aware of that. School progress and closing the gap for the junior high were both C's. Keep going, Ms. Roberts, you have a full taper to go through. And I'll wait till you catch up to the junior high. I apologize. So again, overall C, student achievement is the area which we're working on, Ms. Martinez along with C and I, to make sure we definitely fill that gap. As this next year, that will not be a non-score, that will be a score. If you go on to elementary, now keep in mind as you get into elementary is paired with ECC, so information that elementary has is shared with ECC since they actually do not have any state assessment. So overall, it is a C overall. Again, another area we need to focus on and continue to work on, that is student achievement, as also is non-rated, school progress, and closing the gap as well as the C's for both those areas. If we go to financials, and just hit right to the first time when you see it. You're going to be a little bit. And early ed we've already talked about. And those of you looking at the taper for ECC, it's mainly just there for demographic information, as there's no actual scoring information. Next you have is the Keams Financial Standard Actual Report from 21-22 last year. Again, Ms. Friggle's going to be sharing some new data with you moving into this next year, but this is all lagging data from the previous year. Next up is annual accountability reports for accreditation status. And just as a reminder to everyone, the state actually did not release any new accreditation. What they have us looking at is last year's. So again, last year's accreditation was based on 2 items. It is, of course, on our academic accountability as well as our financial rating. So overall, we're rated accountability rating as C, first rating of a B, which is above standard. Again, the hard work of Ms. Friddle pays off on that area because her financials, along with our improved academics, is what's going to set us in a better position moving forward as a district. Next up, you have the campus performance objectives, or the SIPs. And I want to remind the board and public, we did actually do a full big presentation in December. So if you think back where we shared all the information with all of you, it's based on that information. Again, of course, it continuously is updated based on the needs. The next area is Area 5, which is Special Education Determination Status. And if you go to the next screen for me there, and it says Needs Assistance, and that is under the District Taper Report. If you go to the next page for me real quick, Jeanette, you can actually see the correspondence I get shared with the board, and of course the public can have access to it as well. It's actually a letter written to the commissioner himself, talking about how we need to address special ed. And so it is an area that we are not alone in, but we definitely need to strive in improving our services for the special ed departments. A challenge for us, as always, is we need to do whatever is best for our students. The challenges it imposes on us, of course, is logistics and manpower, as well as resources and time. But we'll continue to improve in that area as well. If you'll go to report on violent and criminal incidences, and if you're going to go for a little bit, Jeanette. In the document released to the public, in addition to giving you the access to the letter to the commissioner, I'll also put all the formula charts the TEA is using to identify those areas for special ed. And also adjoining services within that department. Those are all the formulas. All right, if you go to the next screen, of course, this report, well, it indicates, and of course, this is lagging data, but the best information we have available is coming from the civil rights data collection. And of course, it shows 0 of any what they consider violent or criminal incidences taking place in our district. And then finally, if we slide over to the students' performance in post-secondary institutions, this is actually a customized slide because I noticed, just like many districts, you want to know how you're doing compared to your neighbors. So this is actually custom built by me to identify our 2 neighboring districts. And so if you take a look closely on there, you'll see Divine as well as Lytle. Again, this is something I shared with the board before in the community. What I'd like to do, and I haven't done there yet, I really would like to get this information to really poll what our students are doing after graduation, which is really either taking a look at software or personnel and assigning them, going out and basically soliciting from our graduates what they're doing in post-secondary. So that's really a job in itself to have somebody reach out for a 5-year window, but I really feel that information to be very valid to us moving forward as a district to kind of see what's working and what's not. And so as much as this information is good, it's only as good as the resource they pull it from. That's why I think it'd be beneficial to the district if we grab that information ourselves. Was there anybody actually signed up to hear me review any of this stuff? Is there any questions I have from anyone in the audience or from the board in regards to these 7 areas? All right, if you would bring up the enrollment. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break at this time. Technically, the board meeting has not started yet. So if you want, give a chance to visit with one another. If you have any questions for me as your superintendent, I'm here. We're going to wait on everything else. And there's food available if you're interested.
Nice to see you.
Now we will call the meeting to order at 7:02. We do have a quorum. Mr. Garza, Mr. Bessa are not here, and everyone else is here. And we will go to item 2, public comment. We do not have any. We'll skip down to Lone Star Governance.
Do you want to do 1A?
Do what?
1A.
Oh, we already got one. We'll go to 5A. And just for the 2 board members that got here, we did not call the meeting to order because we did not have a quorum. We only did student presentations, which can be done legally due to it not having any kind of board action.
Okay, sure. Oh. Cool.
Good evening. We're here to present our middle of the year assessments for our ECC campus and elementary. This is actually part 2 of a 3-month series. Last month we presented our high school middle of the year. Tonight will be the ECC and elementary, and then of course in March we'll be doing the junior high. So just a reminder, interim assessments are meant to measure the understanding. These are interim assessments provided by the Texas Education Agency, TEA. They are administered 3 through 5, the students that would normally take the STAR assessment. Okay, sorry. At our ECC, while they don't take the STAR assessment, we do have what we call LGPMs, Local Goal Progress Measures, 1.1, 2.1. So I'll be sharing that data, and then Ms. Harding will talk a little bit about what's happening on each campus at each grade level. So for kindergarten, we administer through M-Class, Amplify M-Class, reading fluency assessments at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and of course end of year. What you have in front of you are the beginning of year and middle of year information for our kindergarten. You'll notice the increase from beginning to middle of year. At the beginning of the year, we were well below 39%. We're now at 28%, so there has been some increases and gains made there. Our first grade reading fluency, you'll notice that we've got the below, at, and above. When it comes to STAR, you'll see approaches, meets, and masters, but for this, it's the below grade level, at grade level, above grade level, and then of course our well below grade level. And so there have been some improvement there. We were at 62% well below, and that has decreased now to 57%. And then our second grade reading fluency, out of 91 students, there was a slight increase. As you notice in the enrollment, students have been enrolling, and so our numbers have been going up slightly. We were at well below was at 65%. We made some gains, and so now we're only at 44% with the well below. And this again is middle of year. This was as of January, so it's been about a month. This data is about a month old.
After collecting all that data, how we're going to respond to that data is we're going to have phonics instruction each day using Haggerty Phonics, which is purchased this year in response to a more rigorous phonics instruction. We also have our progress monitoring using Amplify Reading. We also use our M-Class screener data and response to teaching discussions during our PLCs, which are led by our CNI, our Curriculum and Instruction Department. We also have our regular instructional planning that the teachers have. We also have our high-impact tutoring for grades 1 and 2 through Region 20. We have 3 stations focused on reading fluency using a software that's called Amara, which uses artificial intelligence, which is a very amazing and interesting program that has done some great things for our kiddos and kind of understanding where they are and how they need to grow. And also we have our teachers who are giving our small group instruction as well. We have after-school tutoring for grades 2 beginning in March, and we have our attendance incentives. As we know, attendance impacts academic learning as well.
Shifting gears now to math at the ECC, our kindergarten numbers here. 80 students, 81, there was a slight increase there. At the beginning of the year, we had 58% that did not, well, that should be actually well below. I'm sorry, that should have been switched over. Well below grade level, that actually is now down to 16% at well below grade level. So we made some pretty good gains there. Our first grade math, beginning of the year, I mean, look at the BOY there. We only had one that was at the below grade level, which is what approaches would be. And then there were 85 at well below. And so we've made some significant gains there now. We've now got some at grade level, we've got some above grade level, and of course the below and well below. And then our second grade math, we were at 80% well below grade level, and I'm just inserting the well below and at below because this is using the STAR verbiage. And then you'll notice at the middle of the year, we're now down to only 37% at well below, so there have been also increases there.
And in response to the data, we will use IXL, which is to refine skill practice for progress monitoring. We also have hands-on activities and refinement of our MTS process that has been led by our curriculum and instruction. We have center-based instruction during Tier 2 time. And we also have our Region 20 high-impact tutoring, grades 1 and 2, using the software called Zern, which is also an artificial intelligence software, and our teacher small group table. After school tutoring, we also have for second grade that will begin with our teachers in math in March. And again, our attendance initiatives.
Let me pause you out there for
Yes.
a second. I believe there might have been a question. Or moving on to elementary.
Are the numbers on the screen correct, or the ones you're reading correct? Because they're 2 different sets of numbers on the last numbers. A lot of the numbers you read were not the numbers at the bottom. So
I
I'm
was
just curious.
reading the 80%, 37. Did I not? Was I reading the wrong thing? I might have been looking at the. I mean,
Oh.
I'm reading off of
You know what I
here.
keep looking at? You're probably right, and I'm wrong. I'm looking at the numbers and not
Oh,
the
not the
percentages.
percentages, I was
So
reading
that's what's
percentages.
And what we did is, for those of us new, we want to give a combination, because one of the questions the board asked us was, we are giving percentages, and one of the feedback was numbers on, when we're talking about kids. That's why we made emphasis on top to identify how many kids you see per boy, for example, or beginning of year 91, more middle of year 95, and then when you go down, that's what we're referring to. So you get a percentage, because a lot of times we're talking star stuff and everything else, we're talking global percentage, but a lot of times we want to break it all the way down to the child, so we can identify clearly how many children we're referring to.
I guess my question, Ms. Lopez, is for the younger grade levels, the kinder, the first, second, I can even give a pass for of better understanding and better patience, I guess, because that's not part of y'all's product per se. But for the kinder and first, those are this administration's product per se. Where do you think are what is still causing the, I guess, lower than what I would assume, pretty low numbers still? I mean, what do you think is causing, like, where's the mix-up?
Are we
Or not the
talking,
mix-up, but
are
where
we
we're
talking
struggling?
reading or math? Because those are actually
both.
two entirely different.
Yes, ma'am, I would say both.
Okay, so, I mean, at kindergarten, you have to take into consideration what they're coming into already. And, you know, there have been gains already from the beginning of year to middle year in both content areas. The teachers continue to work with them. Something you do have to take into consideration when it comes to the assessment, and this could be seen as a pro or con, just depending on how you view it, is these, you know, for example, the math is a district-created assessment, meaning that the child is there. A kindergarten usually needs the assistance of a teacher to help them just navigate. So it could just be a technological aspect of, or variable as well, with some of the numbers. We try to get as accurate as we can with how well the students are improving. You know, with reading, we actually use a program called Amplify. With the math, we create the tests ourselves. All of those could imply why we have the lower numbers. I do see this as a good thing, because by the end of the year, as last year showed, we'll probably see some more gains as well. Whereas with the STAR data that we provide you, that's predictive, and it's usually about 5-10%. Here, we could take that 45 to 20, just depending on what's happening in the classroom.
And I guess the reason I'm asking too is because, you know, we've talked about this, and like I've explained before, is we want to give every administration ample time to try and make their impact. You know, I can't blame you for high school, I can't blame anybody for, you know, but at the same time, like we say, we sit back and we look at high school's numbers. Well, you know, some of us are the same ones that didn't, I guess, ask the right questions, put the right amount of pressure, help figure out a solution. And so when I see these big gaps early again, I worry about, okay, are these same kids going to have the same data we see with our upper levels? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'm just asking, is there
Sure.
anything more we can be doing so we're not creating our own big gaps again? And I understand
Right.
that at the end of the day, y'all are not doctors that can sit here and figure out, you know, I mean, I get frustrated with myself because I have two children that are struggling in our own school system academically to a high degree, and it's
Right.
frustrating. Because
Well-
why should I sit here if I can't help my own kids?
Exactly.
But I'm also not the educational expert that is supposed to be able to figure out how. But it's no different than a doctor that can't figure out cancer. I get it.
And so I'll speak
So,
to
well,
that.
I can talk to the process,
Okay, I'll let
because
you
it
talk about
really
it and add
is,
to it.
it really is a process that doesn't happen in 1 to 2 years, depending on the gaps that we're talking about. You know, we've talked about COVID to death, we've talked about the gaps and so forth, but let's just talk with that kindergarten student that comes in. They come in with whatever gaps already. We identify those gaps with our MOY, and then we work to bridge those gaps. Sometimes those gaps are not so big, sometimes they're really big, but it's not something, we can't always bridge a grade level gap within 1 year. It could take 1 to 2 to 3 years. That's if it's ideal. That's if I have teachers that are not, you know, new, or the variable of just how much the parents work at home, and these are just variables. I'm not identifying that that's our current variables, I'm just saying. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. The process that we put into place right now is we've really overhauled our MTSS process with RTI. We're really progress monitoring these students, where they're at, and then we're working with the teachers to have them do activities to support pulling those kids out of what we call tier 2 and tier 3 so that they're into our tier 1. Right now, our tier 2, tier 3 groups are really, really large, and we're trying to shift them to tier 1 with this MTSS process. Again, not a 1-year process, and it will take 1, 2, 3 years for us to get those gaps so that we can avoid those big gaps by high school where it's 5 grade levels. Someone's reading at a 5th grade level. We want to shorten it. So with the process, with this MTSS process that we've got into place, the progress monitoring, the PLCs that Ms. Harding was referring to, where we're working with the teachers to do small group instruction, the phonics programs, all of that together, we're hoping to see that over the next 2-3 years, not immediate.
And so with that, one of the things we've identified as well is that, and this is just straight data, but what you also hear in the community is behavior issues and problems there and counseling support. So that's one thing you're going to see when we do the compensation plan, because we need to get the best possible teachers here that we can. In addition, manpower and utilizing what we have available. I can tell you the challenge right now with handling some of the academics is handling some of the behaviors. I have a single counselor run between 2 or almost 600 students, and that is a challenge. I have 2 administrators trying to handle all sorts of support, as well as trying to take the lead in instruction. So one thing I implemented into the second semester was C&I now helps with professional learning communities. Not because administrators couldn't, but they're already tasked out quite a bit. So that's also another factor in there, is taking a look at what we're doing as a team and getting the feedback. Dr. Hugh and I have had many a conversation, along with other different directors, kind of looking at how can we streamline it better. And so there'll be times that we're coming to you as a board and saying, here's some additional positions we need in order to maximize the academic support my kids are getting in the classrooms every day. So those are all the factors. This just starts the why. By no means is have the answer. There's a lot more to it, but we're working hard at it. And I do want to thank you when you support me, as well as my department here and cabinet, with getting those hires and helping me get those positions to benefit our district.
Thank you.
Now, elementary.
Any other questions besides myself? No? Continue, ma'am.
We're going to shift gears over to elementary. These are actually our GPMs, our goal progress measures in reading and in math. This was a TEA interim assessment. What it does is it's meant to make a projection of what percentage will pass the STAR when we take it at the end of April, beginning of May. So for our 3rd grade reading, you'll notice here at the beginning of the year, we were at 49%, and I'm going with the percentages here, of who are not going to pass. That is now at the middle of the year, looking at 39%. So there has been about a 10% shift. We can probably expect a more shift to occur between now and the actual date, or the actual date of the STAR. For our 4th grade, again, I'm taking you down to the bottom of it, did not meet the passing standards at 57%. That also has now decreased. We've made some gains there, so only 3622 students are projected not to pass, again, giving the fluctuation with the last 2.5 months left. And then our 5th grade reading, we were looking at 46%. This one had a smaller gain, and as I believe Ms. Harding will talk to, just there have been some transitions happening in our 5th grade level that would show why that decrease has been so small.
I'd like to start first by saying that in response to this data, we have a lot of things that we're working on. Earlier when I mentioned the Haggerty program for phonics is something that teachers and our curriculum and instruction came together with our principal to kind of say we needed a more rigorous phonics instruction for our kiddos. That just started this year, so we're hoping to see some growth, especially in that area as we build those foundations strong as they move up into the upper grades. And we are also providing that for some of our upper grades to help close that gap. So we'll be using that same program for our upper grades, which is great. We are also using Amplify for our progress monitoring, M-Class screener data, and response to teaching discussions with our PLC meetings with our CNI department, and Dr. Hewitt as well as myself. We'll also have our regular instructional planning that the teachers do every time they meet. High impact tutoring, again, through Region 20, using the same software. And also teacher-led small group instruction during that tutoring. We also have our after-school tutoring in March. After collecting the data, we are getting those groups together for our intervention in March, after-school tutoring. And again, with our attendance incentives.
Moving on to our math, again, interim assessment with the projections here. 3rd grade math, at the beginning of this school year, 71 students, or 84%, were projected or did not meet the passing standards. That's current grade level standards. Currently, we are at 61% or 54 students that are projected to not pass in the spring as of this moment in time. Again, we still have 2.5 months of more preparing, the tutoring, everything that Ms. Harding has spoken about to bring that number even lower. Fourth grade, we started the beginning of the year with 44 students, 79%. They've made exceeding gains here. You'll notice that they are now at projected only 11 to not pass a STAR with a 19% percentage of the students. And then our fifth grade began the year with 67% or 48 students not meeting the passing standard. We are currently projected right now at only 27 or 35%. So like I said, one moment, a snapshot in time, beginning of February, and we still have 2.5 months left towards STAR.
Just a little background about fifth grade. We did have a couple of teachers that did leave us in the middle of the school year, and we've had to readjust our our fourth and fifth grade team, and it did impact our math department there for fourth and fifth grade. So we had to readjust and make some changes, but we are definitely progressing. In response to the data, we're using our IXL data, of course, to refine skills and practice, and also for continuous progress monitoring. We have our hands-on activities that the teachers are doing during their Tier 1 classroom instruction. We have our refinement of the MTS process with the C&I department. We also have our center-based instruction during our Tier 2 time. So we're making sure that centers are happening in the classroom, which helps with more individualized instruction. We have our high-impact tutoring grades, again with Region 20, with our artificial intelligence, plus our teachers that are doing a great job with small group. And we also have our after-school tutoring that's going to be starting with our teachers with an additional tutoring starting in March. And our attendance incentives.
Ms. Harding, I'm going to
Yes.
stop you right there. Just help me out so all of us can remember. So the high impact tutoring right now is a pilot program we're doing with Region 20 with a limited number of seats. The idea is to capture the data, share it along with other districts that are doing this with the Region Center in hopes that we can partner with them to provide substantial tutoring using the artificial intelligence to benefit our students here in Natalia. So we are in the pilot phase. So if you're going, hey, why don't we have more kids in there? It's a control group right now, we're capturing data. So, thank you.
Thank you. And so that'll give us 2 opportunities for tutoring with our Region 20 tutoring and also our teachers also pulling for tutoring. So we will be able to impact more students that way.
Any questions on that? You can continue, ma'am.
So the last category we have here is fifth grade science. While this is not an LSG goal, we do go ahead and just to give you a progress check on it. This is at the beginning of the school year was a district-created assessment. So these are kind of apples to oranges. These are 2 different assessments. The first one is one that we created here locally because there is no BOY or beginning of year with TEA. And so you'll see the numbers there, 49 students did not meet the passing standard. Now at the middle of the year, TEA does offer an interim assessment. It's not necessarily, what it's doing is it's taking the TEKS that have been taught actually it's taking all the TEKS that are tested. So they're tested over TEKS that are possibly have not been taught as well. So you have to take that into consideration when you're looking at the projected here. So it's at 47 right now with 68%. Again, this is all the TEKS, not just the TEKS that the teacher has taught so far.
In response to that data, we are focusing on individualized student data instruction, and all that is collected throughout the year with our unit tests. We will begin our after-school tutoring as well. The teacher will be providing that on other days for the reading and math. We have our focus on constructed responses. So they'll be focusing on that, which are the new writing responses that TEA is requiring through STAR. And our hands-on mini labs, demonstration labs, we do have a classroom that we are able to utilize for those labs, so they have that hands-on instruction. And we also have writing exercises in Science Daily. The students are able to do that with the teacher. And we have collaboration with Strong Fathers Organization, Dad, and Kids Science Night that we just had the other day. And it was a great turnout. It was great for our kiddos to have that with our dads.
And
Question on science. I know last year that was an area that was a black eye with really hiding facts. Aside from that little tidbit of seems like pretty standard things we should be doing, what are we really doing different to expect different results? Because so far, obviously, we didn't move the needle very far. So what are we really going to do to help these fifth graders in science, knowing we definitely failed those kids last year without, you know.
And I understand we had a little bit of a setback with some movements with teachers, and of course, at that moment, we decided to rearrange how we are teaching the students immediately, just in the last month, to kind of help those students as well, and really get a more focus in science, so that way the teacher is able to focus on science and that science instruction. So we're hoping that, especially with this data, with the TEA, we really get a great understanding of what those kids are expecting to have at the end of the school year and where we need to move on from there. So we're hoping with this data that we're going to be able to really zone in on what the kids need.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I want to go back to the after-school tutoring. So we have children in after-school tutoring now, and that's just for screening, did you say?
No, it's a pilot, so using the artificial intelligence as a pilot through the high-intensity tutoring, but we're also bringing on the traditional tutoring with support from CNI, and they'll also be going in conjunction, but we'll see larger numbers there in those groups.
So we're going to add children to what we already have, is that what?
Yes,
Okay.
so we have one, and then we're gonna, what we didn't grab, we'll grab in the other group as well.
Okay. I was just wondering.
And then junior high should kick in as well, so we'll have that going, to answer a little bit more of the science. We're aware that we have some gaps in fifth grade, so we've been more conscious of what we're doing in sixth grade, of course, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. So you'll notice Ms. Lightletter's really good about putting out what she's doing in science. We're trying to make sure we have 2 fully functional labs in junior high. We are using them all the time. And I'm just working on elementary to get to that same level.
And looking at all of this data for all the different subjects, when you look at the ones that are at the bottom, the well below, are each of those well below children enrolled in this after-school tutoring? Are we taking that and the next level up? I mean, what is the criteria for what kids are asked to go to tutoring? I know we can't force them to.
Yeah, we did collect data to identify those students, but it was kind of a volunteer basis, so the letters were sent out to parents who were interested in attending the program for the kiddos, because of course it goes up until like 5:15, and you have to think about transportation and what time they get home, of course. But it's all based on the parents volunteering the students to attend that. Now, the second phase of our tutoring that's happening after we did our middle of year assessments, that is going to be the teachers are going to be the ones to identify those students based on data.
But if you look at our phases where we have the 4 different levels, at what level are you invited to tutoring? Is it
It's usually the well below to below. So we usually target those areas, of course. But of course, there's other interventions that we do. We pull for intervention during the school day as well. So they will be seeing our reading and math interventionists during the school day if they're in the below and well below grade at their grade. So we have various ways that we can provide support if they're not able to come for after school tutoring. So we do provide support as well during the school day.
okay. And this is, we do have we do have a newspaper down here too, but it is what it is. I do know we have administration here, and so I'm just trying to be frank, as a parent
Yes, sir.
of 2 students, I can tell you the only time I'm really given any kind of feedback on how I can help my daughter is if I email first. I know another board member who's not here has stated his high school teachers are not calling them at all to give them any kind of feedback. So I know it's like anything else, y'all kind of get going on this kind of stuff, and then it kind of trickles like anything else. We're all, at my job, it's human nature, I get it.
Yes.
As soon as somebody's hot on something, you got a million other things you have to also focus on, so I understand that.
Definitely.
And like I said, I know we lack some parental involvement like every school district in the state of Texas. I just want to make sure that we're doing our part of what we can. And I
Yes.
feel bad because I know each of you are stretched to the limit also. And it's like I remind him, like, anything y'all need, hopefully you see that there's usually zero discussion up here. We trust if you need it, you need it. We're going to vote for it, on data, on curriculum, on instruction, whatever it is, positions, we're gonna try and give it, because like I said, we can't figure out, that's not our role, but I do wanna make sure that for that 20 or 30% of the parents who are highly involved in their kids and do want to try and assist their kids to a degree, that we're doing our job to try and at least have that open communication.
Yes, sir. I'd like to add that during our intervention time, during the day, we do send out letters and notify parents to let them know that they are now in the intervention program during the day, and the intervention teachers do contact parents if they've reached that level. Of course, even before the teachers, if they're in Tier 2, they also try to make sure they communicate with those parents, and it's annotated in Eduphoria to let us know that they've been reached.
Thank you.
And that's all for the constraints you guys added on
Oh.
myself. As that we have all that contact information, but I will admit, we're still not where we want to be, and that's still a struggle that we're trying to improve.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Any other questions? Let me continue. Oh, that's
Actually,
it.
that's the
Oh.
presentation.
Thank you.
On 6A, is discuss and approve the Lone Star governance presentation that we just received. I'll make a motion, we accept the presentation as presented. Second by Mr. Rodriguez. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor state aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Board constraint 2.0. Do not either collectively or through the actions of individual board members undermine or appear to perform any of the duties or responsibilities of superintendent administration. Mr. Ramadan, has you done so? Ms. Rodriguez? Mr. Gentry? Ms. Alderete? Nor myself. We'll move on to item 6B. Discuss and consider Lone Star Governance quarterly evaluation for next year's projections. Ms. McAnally?
Good evening, board and Mr. Piles and audience, all of you. Wanted to ask you to follow along for the next quarter, which would be 2 more months out. And we should have done that projection when I was here last month, and we did not because it took me about 25 minutes to get through it. And so I didn't want to linger so long. But I'm going to suggest to you that as you look at this, that for Vision and Goals 1, that you keep your 12, because we'd have to have a community meeting to change that. If you recall, that's one of the criteria for Vision and Goals 1 through 4. So I would ask that we keep the 12 on Vision and Goals 1, on Vision and Goals 2, on Vision and Goals 3, and on Vision and Goals 4 until we have a town hall meeting that involves students in the community. And then on Progress and Accountability 1, I would ask that you project to 4 for that, because I think you'll be above the 10% time spent on student outcomes now with your focus on Lone Star governance. So I'd like to ask you to consider that you project to a 4 for Progress and Accountability. Even with tonight, just board asking questions and those kinds of things, I think that you're going to see your percentage of time spent on student outcomes increase, if that makes sense. And then on Progress and Accountability 2, you were at a 0 this term, this quarter, but I would ask you to consider moving to a 1 on that one, because that was tied to a 0 because you had not done a board self-evaluation in the last 12 months, and now you've done one. So you'll be able to move into column 1 and give yourself credit for having done the board self-evaluation. So that would move us to a 1 under that column. Systems and processes, I would suggest that we stay at a 4, because you would have to go back and review your local board policy again, as you did back 2 or 3 years ago. And so I've not approached that with Mr. Piles at all for the cost of TASB doing that sort of thing, going through all your local policies and seeing if there are any that need to be pulled out. So I think we need some time to think about that. So I would say leave it at a 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then on advocacy and engagement, I would say leave it at a 0. Also, it's tied to town hall communication, 2-way communication. I think we can project that out maybe in 6 months, but not in 3. And then finally, on synergy and teamwork, leave it at a 3 also, because it has the board leads in LSG tasks. And so we've not asked you to do that at this point, and have you leading in keeping the time like Ms. Harrell and I are doing for you, as well as leading in the town hall meetings. So if you were to go with the projection I'm suggesting, that would move you from the 45 this quarter, and that would add 4 more points and move you to a 49 next quarter. And that's what I would suggest that we shoot for. Maybe start slow with baby steps, and then we go great guns. Questions or thoughts about that? Any problems with any of those? I'd love to suggest that every 0 we project something right now, but I think we have to do some work on those town halls before that would happen.
No, I think that's good. I was actually talking to our school attorney today about the self-evaluation, and also another team of 8 that more, I guess, focused on the team of 8 and improving our communication also. And so I think we'll be able to knock out March is always busy between school activities and spring break and everything else. So my goal was for April for us to have our self-evaluation, and also to do the team of 8 training also in April.
Great. And the self-evaluation that's referred to here is the one that goes with the rubric. It's not perhaps the one you're talking about with the attorney, if that makes sense. It's the Lone Star Governance self-eval. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am,
yes.
for that clarification.
Okay. Yes. Any other questions?
Ms. Alvarez, any questions? Mr. Gentry, Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Almendarez? Thank you, Ms. McEnroe.
All right. Thank you all for
I'll
letting
make
me
the
get.
motion to accept the recommendations by our Lone Star Governance Coach as presented for our quarterly evaluation for next quarter's projections as presented. Second by Ms. Rodriguez. Any further questions? If not, all in favor state aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. McEnroe. Move on to item 7A, 2023 budget update. Ms. Fredel.
Good evening, Mr. President, board members, and Mr. Piles. Today I will be presenting a budget update of our current fiscal year. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we are currently 58.33% into our current fiscal year, and our actual revenues are in line with our budgeted revenues. So all is good on that side of the house. Now, on the expenses side, you can see that expenditures are currently outpacing the revenues. Our expenditures are currently at about 62%. So why is that? Well, as a reminder, in the previous year, we did approve some capital expenditures such as our turf field and our portables to come out of our general fund balance. The projects began last year, but will be completed and paid for in the current fiscal year. Let's take a look at that timeline. So our audited fund balance as of June 30th, 2023. Our audited fund balance at June 30th, 2022 is at about $7 million. So if we deduct the turf and the portables, that takes us down to an estimated 5.5. That's just an estimated fund balance at the end of the year. That could absolutely fluctuate. So we are required to keep about 3 months of operating expenses as a best practice. So we absolutely have that. And in addition to that, we have about $2 million in excess on top of what we are required to have. So in summary, we are in a good place. So what else has the potential to affect revenues in the fund balance, in our general fund? If you recall from last year's Budget and Finance 101 course, average daily attendance and property values are 2 of the main drivers that directly impact the district's revenue. So with that said, in complete and total transparency, I am going to share exactly where the district stands relative to attendance and property values, so there are no surprises. So this is a snapshot of our attendance for our first semester. As you can see, these averages are much lower than usual. This information was shared with our cabinet team, so we are working through some solutions to make some improvements. As you know, this is a moving target. We are living in a post-COVID world, and some parents may think that attendance is optional and students can just school from home, so to speak. Many parents are not aware of the relationship between attendance and how that impacts our revenue. We do ask for your help in this area as well.
And to add on this, tomorrow morning will be the first time we're using our new precinct to help us with truancy. And we have court hearings scheduled tomorrow morning. So we'll have several court hearings with attendance, trying to get those students in there. And so that's always a challenge for us there. Also, if you see anything on the legislative side, you've been hearing the conversation, funding based on enrollment, not attendance, because this is where the challenge hits us. And the simple fact of we're not getting the full funding because it's based on attendance. But the expectation is we still provide everything with all the staff and everybody on hand, whether kids are there or not. And so that's a challenge for us as a district. So again, great year to advocate at the legislative area. You've got your points of contact well through TASB to help us out with that. But I just want to give you a little bit more clarity on that front.
Thank you, sir. So it is possible that we may be looking into a PEMS audit just to make sure that we're, everything's in line and we are following all of those best practices. We also recognize that sickness is likely in the winter months, and we absolutely see that trend right here. But just to demonstrate, small mistakes can be costly. Some may say that 92.5% is not a big deal. Oh, sorry. Back up. Well, 3% translates to a loss of funding of about $400,000. So if I budget us at 95.5% attendance and we're only at 92.5%, only 3%. But when you put a pencil to it, that translates to about $400,000. Now, just to be clear, I did balance our budget on an attendance of 1,010. I am conservative. I know that we're living in some unprecedented times. So we are not in the red due to attendance. However, I do want to make it very clear that this is about $400,000 that we are leaving on the table. Okay?
Well,
yes, sir?
question, not necessarily for you, but for administration on this aspect. Same thing, all I can revert back to is when I was in school, which was a long time ago. But, what type, I know we give out the little perfect attendance awards and we have our little nights and all that kind of stuff, but are we doing anything else as far as incentives, whether it's $10 gift cards or I don't know, ice cream parties or whatever? And then number two is, I've seen some districts put out pretty, I don't want to call it blunt and rude, but pretty factual, like, hey, $400,000, this could be new football uniforms, new band uniforms, 10 teachers, etc. You want your kids to be able to come and us be able to pay for out-of-town food and games for athletes and band and everybody else, but hey, this is important. Have we done, I know after the fact, when it gets really bad, obviously, hey, yeah, your kid has to go to court, well, why? And they play the game like they didn't know. But, do we do any of that? I know we don't because I haven't seen it yet, but I think, it's embarrassing, but at a certain point, when it's costing us this amount of money, we have to call folks out to let them know. And like I said, sickness is sickness,
Sure.
But with Facebook and everything else, we see lots of vacations with kids and everything else. It's not real hard to figure out where people are, including myself.
And so one thing we're doing with the principals is we're talking about and working through some ideas. Ms. Martinez had an incentive basketball game, or volleyball game the other day. So what we're doing is, rather than making it a punitive, make it a positive. And we're just working through those different ways. And so that is one thing we're working on. Mr. Martinez kind of taking the lead on it so far, but I know Mrs. Ayala as well as Dr. Hewitt are interested in finding some creative ways to generate a positive spin on it. Basically, think like carrots. And so we're looking at different avenues. And if you got suggestions, ideas, we're game.
I still don't think parents understand. I don't think parents, hey mom, I need to go to school so I can go play volleyball. But the parent doesn't know $405,000 what that can do at Natalia ISD.
And so if you're comfortable with it, we can work on a narrative letter to go out or post in the newspaper to kind of say, we need your help. But at the same time, our challenge too is I also don't want children that are generally sick. And that's one thing Mr. Garza's brought up before, is let's not do it to where parents are bringing obviously sick children to school so that we can make the attendance cutoff. So that's a fine line of the health and safety of all our students with it. So finding that balance is always a concern for us as a cabinet as well.
Thank you, Mr. Piles. And yes, just to kind of piggyback on that, we do want to send a good and positive narrative out to our community. Sometimes on social media, you may hear, the school districts, they just care about the money. No, a child should be at school because they need to be learning, and that is the best place for them to be. So this is just a side kind of conversation, just so that we're aware internally. Everything that was just said is absolutely true, but just as a side note, it is costing the district approximately $400,000, which is interesting because our enrollment is the highest that it's ever been. However, the attendance is not there. So I kind of had that little light bulb as I was preparing this, because our enrollment is excellent, but we need to work on the attendance. Okay. Now let's talk about the property values conundrum that we are currently in. In this case, now don't miss this, we will be in the red if nothing changes. Approximately 25% of Texas districts either have a state assigned value, which means the value that Medina County assigned to us is considered invalid. Or districts may be in year 1 or year 2 of what they call their grace period. Natalia is not in a grace period. So why the differences? Why is there a difference between what the county appraises and what the state appraises? As you can see, there's a difference of approximately $36 million. Well, if you notice, there's about a 6-month difference between when the county certifies, and when the state certifies their values. There's about that 6-month difference in there. Well, there could be some major improvements done between that time. Maybe the samples that the state took were not an accurate representation of what is not an accurate representation of our community as a whole. For example, if the state sampled some properties out at Forest Woods and applied that same formula across the board, we would definitely see some discrepancies there. Now, on the other hand, the county touches every single property and assesses what they believe for that value to be. So, just as a recap, the state takes a sample and the county touches every single property. And of course, there will always be some market value differences. Now, there is this thing that exists that's called the confidence interval, and it's about a 10% swing. So if the county appraises at a number and then the state appraises, if it's 5% on one side or 5% on the other side, we are considered to have valid values, okay? But we are outside of that confidence interval, which means that our values, as they were appraised by our chief appraiser, are not valid. Now, it is an unfortunate situation because school districts are caught in the crossfires between the state and the county, and it's the schools that get affected. So Mr. Piles and I took a little field trip out and visited Miss Jeanette Dixon, who is our chief appraiser, and she informed us that several districts here in our area are protesting and appealing the state's certified values. So why is all this a big deal? It's a big deal because the state is saying, hey, Natalia, Medina County appraised your properties too low, and you are missing out on tax collections. Now, we all know what that means. When tax collections go up, state revenue goes down. So the state comptroller is basically telling us, sorry, but you should be collecting more at the local level. So therefore, we need to pay you less. And if you look at the demonstration here, we'll be talking through this on a little Budget and Finance 101 class next month. As local collections go up, state funding goes down. So remember that $36 million difference in value that we looked at on the prior slide? That translates to approximately $400,000. It's just a coincidence that it was the same amount with the whole ADA thing. But, so yes, so that translation there is approximately $400,000. Now that, we will be in the red if nothing changes. So what's the timeline for these? Appeals are due sometime in March to the state, and Natalia, we have already submitted our appeals to the state. So that is first thing, check the box, we're good. Now districts may get an update from the state in late May. Now this timeline does not happen quickly, just FYI. But the final revenue will not be known until the near final settle up, which happens sometime in the August or September timeframe. So this is not on anybody's to-do list, like to be done quickly. So we are currently working with Purdue Brandon Law Firm to appeal our values. And I did ask Miss Lacey Harrison, which is the attorney that I'm working with, I asked her, in her experience with working with district appeals all these years, what is the likelihood that the state will reduce their values? Now, she said that the values will be reduced. She's almost 99.9% of the time, the state does back off from the values, but the question still remains, by how much? And we don't know at this moment. I am modeling out some different revenue scenarios, and I'm waiting for TEA to update our summary of finances later this month to get a better number on our ADA and our student populations. Now, we did talk about maybe getting Ms. Dixon to come out and talk to us about our the status of our values and the appeal process next month, maybe, possibly. So that way we can get her thoughts and predictions on the matter.
And so that's something that all of you can think about. I know Natalia went through this a few years back. I know I've experienced it before. I will tell you that our two neighboring districts are also in the same predicament as well. So we're not in luck, which is not always good, but in the sense of dealing with the state, the comptroller we are. So again, I'll reach out to you, all of you as board members. Ms. Dixon's done that before for us in Lytle, and it is of value just to have her come in and reassure all of you. There is nothing we as a district could have done. This all has to do with the county, the state comptroller, and the powers to be above us. Where we're looking at is the possible impact to our children. And so again, I will reiterate, if that's something we feel like would be beneficial to us and let the community know that she's here, she's going to be presenting, we can certainly do that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Okay, enough doom and gloom. On the happy side, let's talk about food service. We just got done with the general fund. We made it through that cave. Okay, so food service. Food service currently has an excess fund balance of almost $600,000, and that is an audited fund balance as of June 30th, 2022. Now, we must keep 3 months of operating expenses, which right now currently sit at about $240,000. So this leaves a difference of approximately $346,000. So I am working with Tanya, our food service director, to submit our capital expenditures approval with TEA so we can hopefully get our ECC cafeteria up and running for the next school year. Now that does not happen overnight either, but we are hopeful that we'll get the approvals that we need, and we can get our maintenance team to pretty it up a little bit, and hopefully we can get that ECC open. In case anybody was wondering, most of that $346,000 in the surplus in our food service came from last year due to our rates being temporarily higher because of the loss of attendance in the prior year due to COVID. So I didn't want to set the expectation that the fund balance was just going to keep growing and growing, and we just had this unlimited amount of revenue out there to spend. So these are one-time funds, and best practice is to use them for capital expenditures. So that's the direction that we're moving at this time. Okay, debt service. So debt service is definitely on target. Revenues are ahead of expenditures, and 100% of this year's debt payments have been paid. So we are in a good place. Now, we are in the middle of defeasance number 2. So again, a defeasance is just a fancy word for a principal payment. So we are on target to make a principal payment on our bond 2019, and that estimated principal payment will be about $710,000. This will generate an interest cost savings of approximately $400,000 for district taxpayers. So if you recall, we have already completed defeasance number 1, and we're in the middle of defeasance number 2. So if you combine the interest savings between those two defeasances, we will be saving our district taxpayers well over $500,000. So that is excellent news, and we're very excited about that. So debt service is on a good page. Okay, on another lighter note, here's an update of our federal ESSER funds. We have just about spent ESSERs 1 and 2. 1 is definitely spent, and you can see right there what we spent it on, mostly interactive boards, Chromebooks, PPE, hotspots, and our the famous Germ Blast services. So ESSER 2 is just about spent. We're spending the last of what we have on some district-wide carpet replacements. And ESSER 3 is on target to fund our positions for the remainder of the year and next year as well. So as you can see, that little cliff over there on the edge of that ESSER 3 slide, that little ESSER 3 block over there, that is the 24-25 school year. And what we are referring to, or what TEA is referring to as the funding cliff. So we have had the advantage of having those federal funds over the last 3 years. However, they do have an expiration date. So beginning in 24-25, we hopefully will either no longer need the positions because we closed the learning gaps, or we find a way for the general fund to absorb them. On the previous slide, so at the very beginning of the pandemic, we would have the Germ Blast services come in. If we had any COVID cases reported, we would have the company come in and spray. They would come in with their electrostatic sprayers and basically disinfect the classrooms. So if we had a case in one of the classrooms, we'd go in and the company would come in and spray.
An existing contract?
No.
We had 1 year. What we did from there is we actually purchased equipment ourselves, and we're able to do it on demand ourselves as needed.
Are we still implementing that anytime we identify?
Yes, if we have any uptick, basically either administration, the cabinet, Nurse Yang is the one that'll call it in, and or if Mr. Ryerson notices anything from his custodial staff as well.
Okay. And I have an additional question on the previous slide. I just didn't want to
Of
interrupt
course.
you. On the excess funds that you have already received any type of quotes, or do you have any estimated figures as to what it's going to take to repair the ECC cafeteria? And if so, does that need to be done by a certain time period in order for you to apply those funds, or is it
Okay.
going to go on to the next school year?
About 2 Thursdays ago, our food service director did meet with a couple of vendors, and she is sitting on some quotes. We're waiting on our final quote. All 3 vendors that she has spoken to have assured her that the equipment should not take very long to come in, at least all the equipment that we're looking at right now. So with that said, if we are able to get the capital expenditures report approved with TDA, which also proves to be a pretty speedy process, at least it has been in the past, we are on target to receive equipment and open up by the beginning of the school year.
And in addition to that, did you assess the capacity? Will it be adequate capacity for the number of enrolled students you have on that campus currently?
Yes, ma'am. We did have a fire marshal come out and inspect the cafeteria. I believe we are approved for up to 118.
So rough number, there's Mark Cheswood for the county, came out and not taking a look at some of the square footage as rough numbers because it is not a classroom. We're slated at 118 students to be seated in there. So we meet our standards, and that is not including some of the hallway areas. It's also another square footage. I would say there are probably another 50 square feet that were in his calculation. So he was very comfortable supporting us with some adjustments on fire extinguishers. So that was the biggest thing there, and some lighting up of exit signs and everything else, but minimal amount on our side. But he was real positive, real supportive, and going, yes, I can really understand what you guys are trying to do, and yes, you meet all the requirements. Because that was, before we did anything, he was the first person we brought out.
Thank
So at the next board meeting on March 27th, we will be going over our Budget 101 class and our Finance 101 class. So that is super exciting. We'll be looking over some acronyms and taking you through the revenue development process and how the budget development works and budget templates and spreadsheets galore. So that's exciting. And I will also be giving you an update on what we know so far relative to the 88th legislative session. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you may have. That's okay.
Questions for Ms. Ripple? Thank you. 70 calendar information for the 2023-2024 school year, Mr. Files.
This information board is just to let you take a look at it. We'll start with 166, Jeanette, if you don't mind. And so what we want to do here is just for information purposes of the board. Ms. Tiffany graciously has endured being on the DIC, and the last meeting it was just shy of 2 hours, but it was a lot of great feedback from business, community, parents, employees, everybody taking a look at it. So this is 2 calendars, again, it's draft. The idea was to show all of you as far as support and information purposes, and then probably at the end of this week, roll out to a survey to the community, capture that data based on 2 calendars that I've been working on with information from DIC, and then come back to DIC with that information. So the first one here is a 166. It's adding 15 minutes of the day. What you're seeing there is anything in gold is basically added 3-day weekends. So you notice 3-day weekends in August, in September, in October, 1 in January, 1 in February, and 1 in April. What you're also seeing there is green throughout the year, which are teacher work days, as well as one conference, I believe, is in purple on the 28th of August. That's a parent conference. And what you're looking at there is providing a little bit more flexibility. Remember, as I've been charged by the board to try to recruit high-quality teachers for our students and the struggles I've been having, the 2 things at our disposal is time and money. So the idea behind adjusting this calendar is to basically entice folks to come join us in Natalia, to teach with us, to teach for us. And some of the benefit would be a calendar like this one as one proposal. Also working more work days, at the same time offering some 3-day weekends. In addition to the blue, which are the normal breaks. The only addition in there I added was the solar eclipse on April the 8th of 2024. It's only for 1 minute, but the full range for Natalia is well over 1 hour. And at this point, counties already notified me that safety and first responders will not be immediately available. And I am concerned with having all of our kids at school, the abundance of individuals that want to be here for that solar eclipse, and if we should have an emergency, not having first responders here. So my recommendation to the committee was, let's go and take the day off. And so that's what's in there. So again, blue is normal days off. Purple are conferences, and I believe you'll see one August and January. And then of course the gold would be the new 3-day weekends. Green being work days, and again it's 166 instructional days. And we meet the minutes by adding 15 minutes to the day. So that was one, and that committee on that pathway looked at a 188, a 170, and then landed on the 166 calendar. Once we finished that process, we then took a look at a more extreme calendar, which is the 155. And I apologize for my voice. Allergies are kicking in pretty good. I'll give Jeanette a chance to kick that at full screen. Now, if we are to be bold and daring and really recruit and take away from other districts and get folks here, then the question is, how bold do we want to be as a community? And again, it's information for the board only. It's going back to DIC. And my idea behind that is to have 2 calendars to bring to the board to select, one being recommended by DIC, and the other one is another option. So the other one we worked through was a little bit different. On this one, you can now see a lot of Fridays off. Where that helps us is, one, remember, when we have any athletics, I lose 20 teachers. On days where I have some of my staff that have children that participate in sports, they take the day off to go see their children. For some of my families struggling for financials, That's an extra day for my kids to work on a part-time job, or catch up on work for school, or work on online programs that we have currently going at the high school. So it creates opportunities. So when you look at that one, you're going to notice there, now what you see is you have your conferences in there for parent conferences, one per semester. You now see the greens, which the greens are work days, which any green day is a student holiday, a teacher work day, but now you see the gold. The difference between this and the previous calendar is this adds 45 minutes to the day, which now takes us to the max we can go by law. So we're not going a 10-hour day or anything like that. This is actually 8 hours, 15 minutes. But you can see what it creates as far as recruitment goes, when all of a sudden I can go, come work for us, and look at all the Fridays you have off. Now, no Fridays off in August, no Fridays off in May. Those are your slam months to try to get everything done. But look at what it creates for opportunities when I'm trying to recruit to Natalia that nobody else is doing. And so the idea behind that was the DIC kind of looked and formulated what we wanted to do there with adjustments for holidays. We looked at Thanksgiving. We looked at Easter Monday, Good Friday. We took a look at how best to do the New Year's. And so working with us, we worked through 2 additional calendars to come to this 155B calendar. And so again, all I want to do is share this information with you as a board, share it with those of you sitting in attendance, which is all of my staff. And then the idea was to give it back out to the community again to get their input on these 2 calendars, what their thoughts are.
What is our starting teacher's salary at currently? 50, just
50,
over 50, correct?
Yeah. And we have it set up now to increase over the next couple of years. Part of our compensation plan we presented last year was to slowly increase it every year as well.
And I don't know if the whole board realizes this either. You know, Northside, their starting 0-year experience, 57,590. Northeast, 55,300. Judson, just over 55. 15 minutes up the road to Southwest, 56.9. 15 minutes to the right, 55,725 at Medina Valley. You know, we can't match them step for step with pay. You know, and then you combine, you know, which we all have difference of opinion on how to get the message out on the attendance. So parents, you know, those that may oppose a 4-day week, but at the same time, we struggle to get you to bring your kids to school 5 days a week as it is. We're losing $400,000. We can't spend that $400,000 on raises like we need to. So we don't have, and like I asked Mr. Piles, you know, and this is another difference of not me and him difference, but where some may differ on how to get this word out. I thought the survey he put out was great. You know, me being a big mouth, I would have said a lot more to make folks realize we're not doing this so we can have just this extra luxury of sending everybody home for 3-day weekends. You know, how many in our community actually know we have openings still that have 1 to 2 people apply? You know, it's like we talked last month, you know, when we're getting 500, 600, 700 pick, that doesn't mean we're not getting the best we can get, but it's just a fact of what we can get, you know, and we can't pay. And why are folks going to drive 40 miles down the road when you see those salaries just from those districts? I mean, not counting Church Universal, Alamo Heights, on and on and on. We've got to do more to be competitive. We've never, and since I've been on the board, I don't remember a time where we've had this many teacher openings in the district in February, ever. Not since I've been on the board. And it's not a problem just here in Divine, Live, and everywhere else. So, I mean, we've got to find a way to get creative. And I think, you know, it is going to be a little inconvenient for, you know, some folks. There's still 1 million people lined up to get their kids here after school. I don't get that, but that's not for me to judge. But there's got to be a way, and I think, you know, if we try it for a year and it doesn't work, great, we go back to drawing board. You know, but I think the feedback has been positive in supporting the 4-day week, and I think we have to do a big step. We can't keep waiting because we can't catch up financially to those folks. But I think you would be really shocked at how many applications we would get if we took a leap of faith for a year to try it out. And like I said, maybe painting a bigger picture for parents to show, hey, did y'all know we have whatever it is, 4 teacher openings right now as we speak? You know, we probably have people talking about us, even though nobody's applying. We can't just put somebody there that doesn't exist. You know, and the few that have applied, we don't want around our children. So I think we have to do something. And also, it's a pat on the back to all these folks that are here at 8 o'clock at night, and they've been here since 7 o'clock this morning also. So that's my personal take on the two calendars, which I did ask him to bring this to the board prior to going out to the community. I do think we need to put this out to the community. We may only have 30 people show up, we may have 100 people show up, but I do think it's important. But I think, like I said, a real picture needs to be painted. Nobody else is also here watching this data and understanding, to the high degree of academic issues. And there's just a lot of questions I think parents need a more clear, real picture painted for them on why we're trying to do what we're doing. Anybody else have feedback?
So I would say definitely commend the team that put together these academic calendars, and while I definitely support the strategies that we're going to take for recruitment purposes, I mean, we do need teachers and staff, I just want to make sure we don't leverage the children as far as their, mental health, anxiety, and things related to extending the school day. I do know for a lot of adults, they don't even find the capacity to work the full workday, so I just want to make sure that we structure the day for the children to make sure that they have adequate physical education, outdoor exposure, and activities that are going to interrupt just the curriculum itself.
And that was some of the feedback we got from the younger ones. So what we talked about there, and Ms. Harding's here, Dr. I'm awesome. Hewitt, I'm going to hear it for some reason. But anyway, so the idea behind that was multiple recesses, adjusting with the lunches, and that's where we also want to see about opening up the ECC cafeteria, because right now, this cafeteria is at the mercy of trying to feed 3/4 of the district. So sliding that over, the idea is working with Ms. Martinez and Ms. Ayala also to take a look at our advisement class, and possibly look at our lunch, extend our lunch.
That's something I brought up to him asking about the lunch. I mean, he already had the idea, but I asked him, I can't tell you how many teachers that have told me over the years, we don't have time to eat lunch. The time we get kids to a cafeteria, we get back, we check an email, we respond to an email. No offense, but none of us take just 30-minute lunches, I don't think. Maybe some of us do.
And so what we'll do is we'll look at the time, but we were also very adamant in the committee talking about, if we look at any of these calendars, we've got to be on. There's no excuse. As soon as we get the kids in the classroom, they're engaged, they're actively involved, and we're not mailing anything in. There's no excuse of lesson plans. There's no excuse of anything. We need to be ready to go.
But the 4-day week, it's only how much longer? 45 minutes?
45 minutes, yes, sir.
And if we extended kids' lunch another 20 or 30 minutes, we're talking 10 to 15 minutes longer of an
So
actual-
30 minutes of instructional time.
I mean, that was my concern, that they have ample time to express themselves and have some sort of physical activity incorporated into the day, along with lunches scheduled in a time. I mean, we don't want them to fall so early in the day that they're staying later.
Yes.
And
And so the idea is, like right now, Ms. Harding, remind me real quick, we start our first round of lunches at 11 o'clock. So if we could adjust that for our little ones, because I do worry about, those are the ones I worry about. Because the rest of them, yeah, they figure things out, they can pack more things. It's my little ones that I'm like, if we could adjust that lunchtime just a little bit. And then working some snack, and working some running around time. Some basically brain breaks. And that's what we talked about when we had the committee. I know when Tiffany was with us. We talked about those brain breaks. And that's what we'll be working on. But now ECC wouldn't be slaved to having to hit a certain time to get here in order to make the time for them, to make the time for elementary, to make the time for junior high. We can now adjust that. And part of it, a lot of this has to do with dealing with master schedules and making sure really and truly we're actively ready to go. So that's where if you look at this calendar in particular, you have those green Fridays, which are teacher work days. So that's prep time, work time, PPE time, where you take care of things. Also, there should be no excuse from the staff when I go, you just had a 3-day weekend. When Monday hits, we're gone.
And I can tell you too, from him posting on social media, the calendar, and this is, I can show y'all so you don't think I'm making this up, but since I retweeted one of his posts about the survey, there was 16 brave teachers from South Texas that reached out, maybe jokingly, but Smith, you're gonna have our resume if you go to, but it's folks that, it's the same thing. I mean, it's, heck, if I could find a dealership that worked 4 or 5 days a week instead of 6, I'd be applying there, I guarantee you.
And then my other concern would be any type of food insecurities that we have within our population. Do we have the resources or any type of programs that would allow for some type of packaged meal to be sent home for that.
And so what we're looking at, that's Ms. Fridd will help me out with that along with Tanya, Food Services. And what they're looking at is if we can, and that's where we need to go through. So I'm going through a certain amount of the motion, but until I know which calendar we're leaning on, I'll know what direction. So for example, say, if 155 is where we go, that's where what I'd really like to do is offer the same thing as our summer feeding on that time. And then some of those Fridays, realistically, we would be looking at contracting some of our teachers to do the 45 hours. So that would mean we'd have kids here and we could feed them. Athletics would still have kids here, so those are kids that I can feed there. So I would be trying to do all that. Another thing, Ms. Letty, if we get to that point, we talked about having deployed or even looked at any further, is backpack buddies. Trying to work with a group, seeing if the churches, last time I did it, I used churches, but that could be another resource for us, which would simply be backpacks that we put food in on, let's say, a Thursday, and that would be extra food for the kiddos to take home with them. So those are some avenues we're looking at, because I'll be honest with you, the food insecurity survey dropped really low. I thought it'd be higher. Me as a dad, when I filled out the survey, that was my concern. Biggest thing was feeding our kiddos in the district, and it's still low, but I still see a need, because when I see the distribution we do every month, and I know that some of our parents not only hit our distribution here in Natalia, but they go to Divine, they go to Lytle, they hit some of the other surrounding areas. I know that's a concern for me. So I know that's one of the ones we've had high on our list of trying to tackle. The survey data from this was in your notes.
Okay. I knew I saw
Yes.
somewhere, but I couldn't remember where.
It's in your notes. So all your notes, you have all the current survey data. I did shut it down, but it is in your notes. And I want to say, oh, it's on the website as well. Ms. Roberts released it. Once I got it, you got it, I also released it on the website, so you can see the survey data there. And again, once we capture the data from this point, I'll release it again as well. That way we're as transparent as possible.
Could we release a link on Facebook to the website saying, hey, you want to see how survey data turned out for the
First
calendar?
phase?
Or for, yeah, just to have folks that don't look at our website a lot.
Jeanette and I will take care of that, and Ms. Harrell, we can certainly release that. We'll do the same thing again.
I mean, just to kind of follow up to see, okay, how did we get to these two calendars? Well, it was a lot of it was based on y'all's feedback.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof.
We can do that.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you to all of y'all that worked on this. Any other questions? Thank you. Enrollment report, sir. Sir?
With my voice. So overall, district-wide, we're down one. We had one increase at ECC, one decrease elementary, 2 increase at junior high, 3 decrease at the high school. Again, we're still running at 1,204 Mustangs, so higher than we've ever been.
Thank you. We'll move on to consent agenda. If anybody needs to pull anything out, now would be the time to do so. If not, I'll open the floor for a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Got a motion by Ms. Rodriguez, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Gentry. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor state aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're going to adjourn at 8:17 p.m. Thank you.